Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode I think it's time to start building the roll cage for the Alfarrari. Okay, well, we're back on the Alfarrari today, and for those of you who might need to catch up, I put a link up above so you can catch up to where we're up to on this car. And if you're enjoying the Alfarrari stuff, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It keeps the ball rolling in the right direction. So previously, I've sort of been working backwards and forwards on this car, doing different things, and the issue I've got at the moment is that I'm just waiting on a bunch of things to get delivered to do different parts of this car, which is really holding me up. I wasn't planning on tackling the roll cage until a later date, but I have to tackle it now because I'm sort of stuck. So I've done a lot of thinking about this car, about where it's going to go. I mean, people have been asking me about how I'm going to reinforce it and stuff like that. And I've mentioned previously, I will be doing some thorough reinforcing on this car. I just have to wait until I sort of got a certain amount done. It's not worth reinforcing without actually having the entire thing ready to go. Now, as far as roll cages go, I could build a fully integrated roll cage that goes through, that sort of tucks in and ties into the pillars and stuff. The trouble is that is not road legal, particularly not in Australia, and it's not safe anywhere in the world, really, unless you're wearing a helmet. If you get in an accident, myself being a firefighter, I've seen plenty of heads hit windscreens, and it's just, it's a very dangerous thing to drive with a full roll cage in a car on the road. So I'm not going to have a full cage in this car. I'm going to have a half cage. As you might have seen, I've built a couple of them before. I will be making it bolt-in. Bolt-in, it will have good proper plates on it. It's going to be built to the Motorsports Australia standard. So basically it is it'll be completely motorsports legal. And the reason I'm doing it bolt-in is more just it makes it easier to get it in and out, and to paint it and make the whole interior nice and neat and to the level of what I want to do. It's fine if you're building a race car. This is not a race car. This is going to be a very nice, neat, hopefully comfortable road car. So first things first, we need to sort of have a bit of a look at where it's going to go, and then I'll start talking you through the actual process of building a cage. Alright, so as you've seen, I cut out that reinforcing cross brace that I put in here. That was back when I actually had these B pillars cut out to get everything lined up again. Now they're all in, it's solid, it's good. The next thing to do is actually work out the rough design of where I want the cage. Now, it needs to go onto solid mounted parts of the car. Usually it'll go straight through to the floor of the car, or basically sit on top of the frame rails, which is what I'm going to do here. Either side of me down here, there's a spot on the floor at the base of the B pillar that's basically tied on top of the edge of the side frame rails. Now this car sort of has two lots of frame rails. It has the outer frame rails, which run all the way basically from the front wheels to the back wheels, all along the sides of the cars. But then it has sort of these inner frame rails that go forward, but they're in two halves. So there's a half that sort of goes up to underneath the driver's seat, and then it starts again underneath the back seat and then goes backwards, but it doesn't join up in the middle. There's just sort of sheet metal floor in the middle. So pretty much whatever cage you build, doesn't matter if it's just a basic roll bar all the way through to a full WRC rally car cage with bracing going everywhere. It all starts from the main roll hoop, and at least by the Australian standards, which is Motorsport Australia, this is Schedule J. I just downloaded it off of the net. So if you're building to Australian Motorsport Australia standards, that's they've got all the details in here, diagrams of how all the joints need to be, the size of the base plates, all that stuff is all completely covered, the size of the tube, so it's not that difficult to build it to the correct specs. The main hoop is the first thing that needs to be done. It cannot be done in multiple sections, so you can't sort of buy some round bends and then weld it together. It has to be made out of one piece of tube, cold rolled. It has to be the right tube, which I'll show you in a minute, and it has to be bent in one piece. So that's the first bit, is I need to I've worked out where I'm going to mount my bases here, come up vertically, kink in slightly, and then roll again over. So I know roughly where I'm going to build it now. The first thing I need to do is find the dead center of the roof and then start measuring up my cage. All right, so I spent a fair bit of time in here going backwards and forwards, coming up with a basic layout, a basic measurements of how I need to build this cage now, or the main hoop. Now, as per the regulations, Schedule J, basically the lower portion of the cage needs to be vertical, and then it's allowed to have a bend either side of the top and one bend on the way down. It can't sort of have 1, 2, 3 multiple bends everywhere. It's got to be basically just 2 bends and then 2 bends. That's it. And this is my cheater tube. So this is a piece of the actual roll cage tube I'm going to be using, bent in my bender. The roll cage tube I'm going to be using is 1 3/4 inch, and it's 0.095 inch wall, I believe, which is the regulation to use on the cage. So that's what I'm using. And because I know the exact angle, I can sort of line up and get the work out sort of roughly where I need to bend this tube to get the bend in just the right spot to sit in this car in the basic configuration I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my measurements and put them onto a template on some paper on the floor. All right, so I've drawn my plan up onto sort of a template on this paper here on the ground. I've got my piece of tube back over there cut out, ready to go at length. Basically, I've given myself a little bit extra on either side. The way I like to build the main hoop is I want to start in the middle. Start in the middle and work my way out either side. Now, you have to spend a bit of time making sure everything's nice and neat and square. I've got my tube bender. This is one that I built. I put links to the videos on building it and the plans in the description. You cannot use a pipe bender. So I think I've got the frame back there, but basically it's sort of like the basic T-bar sort of shape with 2 rollers and the jack in the middle, and it just presses the die up and bends the pipe. That is a pipe bender. That's not a tube bender. It doesn't work on roll cage tube. I'll link also to the video on that. You can have a look. It doesn't work. I tried every possible method. The issue with those tube bending dies, or the pipe bending dies, as you say, is that they try and bend the roll cage tube on too tight of a radius, and it will just kink. No matter if you fill it with sand or you do all the methods, it doesn't work. Trust me, it doesn't work. The only way to do it is to use a proper tube bending die. Now, pipe and tube are different. This is roll cage tube, cold drawn tube, and to be allowed to be in the car, you cannot heat it. It has to be cold bent. That's what we're going to use the tube bender for. Now, I'm going to mark the center of my piece of tube, which will be the center of my hoop, and mark out, and I know I want to start my bend, because I use my cheater tube, at 285 mils out. So I'm going to line it up and mark out my center location and then start bending my hoop. Okay, so the first bend, it's sitting beautifully onto my template there. as you can see, but I found that actually from where my mark was, my original center was here, and my original mark was this mark here, and it doesn't actually line up. So I've remarked it so that I can get it fitting my template perfectly. That's why I use a template. So I've got my new center mark now, and I came in the same distance on the other side from my mark, so I know if I bend here, it should match in perfectly on this other side. So let's give it a go. All right, so I've cut out my my main hoop. I'm quite happy with the design of that. It actually looks quite good. I have just done a test fit in the car, but obviously it's not really fitting very well because the legs are too long, which I deliberately did. I just gave myself a little bit of extra room. So I'm going to trim them, leave them about an inch, 25 mil longer than what I think I need. So I've got some room to move there. If I'm not going to, once you cut it too short, you can't add it on. So I think that should just give me enough so that I can start playing with it and trying to get it into the right space and see how well it fits. All right, so at the moment I've just wedged it up against the roof. It's too high because I haven't finished trimming down these legs as low as they need to go. So I am going to bring it down, but I am really happy with how tight I've got this, because obviously I've got to fit a inner trim paneling in this against this rear side of the car, and there's got to be a headlining in the roof, but it's tucking in nice and close to everything all the way around. It's going to be a beautiful fit. I am very, very happy with that. So next move is to trim this down a little bit more, get it sitting where I want it, and then start looking at some base plate mounts. All right, so as I mentioned, the next step is to build the base plates for the cage to sit on. So obviously you don't want the cage to just sit on the sheet metal on the bottom of the car, because if you do get in a rollover, those arms are just going to punch through the floor. That's why, as far as Schedule J goes, it requires at least a 120 square centimetre base for bolting cages, which is what I'm doing. That this base plate needs to be welded to the floor of the car. So basically what it's doing is it's spreading out the load over a larger area, and this is the minimum sort of size I've drawn here. So as you can see, 100 mil by 120 mil, that's 120 square centimetres. That's the rough size, but I can't fit just a regular rectangle in the car. That's give me an idea, but I can trim this panel to shape to actually fit the size I need. Okay, so I've got my base plates now, which are 120 centimetres square. There's one there and one over the other side right there. Now, what I need to do is, these will eventually be welded onto the car, but I need to put captive nuts on the underside of them, and I need another base plate that will sit on the bottom of the main hoop that will actually bolt onto these plates. basically what I just did there was I marked out where the foot of each of the legs of the main hoop are going to sit in the car. This outside plate is obviously going to be welded onto the cage itself. The other plate is going to be welded onto the car. And then I put some captive nuts on the bottom of it. They're all welded in nicely. So I've done that on both sides. So I now have 2 feet and 2 plates that I can now put in the car and weld in solid so that I know exactly where everything is supposed to sit. Which means now is the time where I need to go in and make these things fit in the car, which means I need to drill out holes in the floor of the car so that these captive nuts will sit through into the plate that I've already got there, and then I can weld the entire base onto the car. All right, so you can see here I've done my 2 base plates, this one here and the one on the other side. They're all welded in now with the captive nuts already in there. I put some weld-through primer underneath and weld-through primer on the top. People ask me all the time what it is. There's a link in the description of every video showing what that stuff is. Now I've got my plates that are going to be welded to the bottom of the main hoop itself. I'm going to bolt these into the base plates so then I can start lining up the main hoop, get that in the exact right spot, and then we can tack that in, and that will put us a long way towards having the main structure ready to go. All right, so you can see here what I've gone through and done is I got a piece of timber out of my scrap timber pile, and I cut it out to be just the right shape to be able to hold my main hoop into position. So I've got it in just the right spot, the right angle, everything is exactly the way I want it. So now I can go around, I can tack the feet onto my base plates, and we have a main hoop basically done. All right, and there we have the main hoop construction basically done. I am very happy with how that's all turned out, and this is with the seat back as far as it goes. This is the furthest, far too far away from me. I'm quite short, so yeah, I'll be riding with it much closer to the steering wheel, somewhere more like, I'll be somewhere more like this. So there's heaps of space in there. But that is all we have time for this week. It's quite time consuming doing this stuff, but to be honest, it's actually much easier building this cage than any other cage I've built so far. There's so much room in here, surprisingly for such a small car. Very easy to maneuver, get the cage in and out. Nice big door openings. It's quite a good thing. But that's it for this week. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 1920, Enzo Ferrari started working for Alfa Romeo's racing department as a driver. He won his first Grand Prix in 1923 at Ravenna. After the race, he was congratulated by Countess Paulina of Ravenna. Her son, Count Francesco Baracca, was one of the most famous fighter pilots of his day. He'd won 34 aerial victories in World War I. He had adorned his plane with a prancing horse, which was said to be a mark of respect for the German pilots who had shot down, whose own planes had bore a prancing horse from Stuttgart's coat of arms. And Baracca had been shot down and killed a few years earlier in 1918, but the Countess suggested to Enzo that he put the prancing horse on his cars for good luck. That is the origin of Ferrari's prancing horse, and why it is actually the same horse as the Porsche coat of arms, as Porsche is based in Stuttgart.
All right, I'm quite happy with the progress this week. Roll cages are slow to make. There's lots of fabricating, lots of time just sitting making all the measurements, making sure everything lines up the way it's supposed to and it's all going to fit. But I'm quite happy with the start. Hopefully next week I can wrap that up, and fingers crossed a bunch of this stuff that I'm waiting on will actually get delivered and I can keep moving forward on all the bits and pieces I've got to do on this car, like pedals and exhausts and all that sort of stuff.
All essential parts that make up the car component.
That's it. But it's getting there. It's. I'm quite happy. So
behave safety first. You're working on the roll cage.
Yes,
good.
I know a lot of you missed the video last week. I was driving. We were away for half of last week, going and collecting up those other cars.
It was a very intensive driving period.
It was a very intense trip. But yes, we're back into the Alfarrari in full swing.
Absolutely. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. And if you'd like to see the videos a day earlier, please follow us on, Patron, and you get to see them with no ads.
A day early. That's the way. And follow on Facebook and Instagram. You know the deal. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one. See ya.
On World War I, who'd won countless aerial victories, 34 to be precise. No, I said that as I realised I said it. For the German aerial pilots he shot down. No, of course not aerial, because the pilots. From the coat. Yes, okay.